Joker, 2019, a villain, a city, and a panic. Arthur Fleck, a struggling comedian with a neurological condition, slides from isolation into infamy as Gotham frays, trash strikes, budget cuts, contempt. The clown makeup is less disguise than diagnosis, a city laughing at pain. Fears of copycat violence turned the release weekend into a security drill. Some theaters boosted patrols, certain regions paused or limited screenings, a few showings were canceled outright. The controversy outgrew the movie. Rarely outright, but anxiety functioned like a partial embargo. The charge sympathy for a killer, or at least a seductive origin myth. Violence is sporadic but jarring. The larger harm is systemic. No safety net, no therapy, no mercy. The scariest scenes are talk shows and subway cars, where humiliation multiplies. Think about the narrative vacuum. When institutions fail loudly, someone else writes the story, maybe in grease paint. Joker doesn't endorse Arthur, it diagnoses a city that built him. The panic proved the point. We're nervous about who gets a microphone when the old narrators lose the room. The Passion of the Christ, 2004, Faith, Blood, and Blowback. The final hours of Jesus' life, spoken in Aramaic and Latin, staged with unflinching attention to suffering. Churches booked bulk tickets, critics argued about violence and interfaith sensitivity. Some governments and boards bristled at the brutality and worried it could inflame tensions. Others embraced it as devotional cinema. The result was a patchwork. Edits, stringent ratings, warnings, and a few no-go zones. Graphic violence, fears of sectarian fallout, and concerns about certain portrayals. The film's popularity made the decisions louder and the lines longer elsewhere. The scourging sequence is notoriously hard to watch, yet the movie aims past shock toward immersion, to make ancient suffering feel immediate, not mythic. This introduces suffering as testimony. Whether you leave moved or troubled, the project is clear. Locate meaning not in lectures but in endurance. The censorship debate asks a smaller question. How much is too much? The film asks a larger one. What did it cost? The Wolf of Wall Street, 2013. Obscene because the money was. Jordan Belfort narrates a rocket ride through fraud, drugs, sex, yachts, and speeches from the altar of greed. Scorsese shoots the high like a commercial because that's how the characters see it. Fun first, consequences later. The excess triggered censors worldwide. Some demanded cuts for language, sex, and drug use, others slapped adults-only ratings that acted like soft bans in multiplexes. A few broadcasters trimmed entire sequences. The outrage wasn't just about acts, it was about how gleeful those acts look. Official words: obscenity, public decency, excessive content. Unofficial worry: glamorizing criminals. When audiences laugh along, regulators reach for scissors. The ugliest scene isn't explicit, it's watching a room cheer as a con man teaches them to be worse. Victims appear mostly as numbers. The moral violence is indifference dressed as hustle. This is about systems that pay handsomely for shamelessness. Scorsese doesn't wag a finger, he trusts you to notice the hollowness under the confetti. The bands miss the point, the film's seduction is the trap. If you leave wanting Jordan's life, you watch the party. If you leave queasy, you watch the bill. Borat, 2006, comedy as cultural grenade. Sacha Baron Cohen plays a clueless Kazakh reporter discovering America, mixing scripted gags with real reactions. The joke lands when people say the quiet part loud because they think the camera is on their side. Several governments objected to national stereotypes. Some venues faced lawsuits from unhappy participants. TV airings were cut to ribbons. A few countries banned it outright or for broadcast, citing offense and public order. Offensive to national image, litigation risk, and the challenge of classifying a movie that treats public space like a prank set. Harm here is reputational and social. The wince comes from cringe truth, watching ordinary people reveal prejudice without a push. This looks at how satire acts as a stress test. If a nation bans jokes, the bit worked too well. Borat argues that comedy doesn't create ugliness, it catches it. The ban stamp becomes a punchline the film predicted. Power hates mirrors, especially the kind that laugh. Basic Instinct, 1992. Frames, scissors, and a stare. A stylish neo-noir, where Detective Nick chases Catherine, a brilliant novelist who may or may not be a killer. Sex and suspicion are twin weapons. The movie wields both like a fencer. The interrogation scene and other explicit beats triggered rating fights and regional cuts. LGBTQ+ groups protested the killer bisexual trope. Some territories trimmed so much the plot frayed. Others kept the film out of mainstream cinemas altogether. Sexual explicitness, politics, and panic about representation. Censors counted seconds, activists counted stereotypes. Ice pick murders bookend the cat and mouse, but the sharper edge is Catherine's control, how performance can bend truth. The movie asks if desire makes viewers miss clues on purpose. There is power in looking and being looked at. The lasting image isn't violence, it's a woman who owns the frame while the system assumes it owns her. The bands tried to police content, the discourse that followed policed ideas, how we see, who we blame, and what thrillers teach while they thrill. Brokeback Mountain, 2005, Love on the Range, Rage in the Lobby. Two ranch hands, Ennis and Jack, build a secret relationship that stretches across years of separations, marriages, and unsent letters. The movie isn't agenda-driven on screen, it's a quiet study of longing and the small choices that define a life. Its tenderness was the controversy. Some theaters declined to book it, certain regions restricted or delayed showings, citing community standards. A few broadcasters refused to air it. The pushback said more about the gatekeepers than the film. Depictions of same-sex love collided with local morality rules and political pressure. In places where law or custom demanded silence, a mainstream romance felt like alarm bells. There's little graphic content. The threat is social, gossip, menace, the risk of violence. The most painful scene is domestic, truth breaking a marriage at a kitchen table. The film's cuts are emotional, not physical. The cost of living by permission. Brokeback doesn't scold, it mourns decades lost to fear and habit. That's why the objections ring hollow now. The movie's provocation was simply taking two cowboys seriously as human beings in love and refusing to frame that as a punchline. Cuties. 2020. Outrage before context. A Senegalese-French girl joins a tween dance crew while clashing with strict family expectations. The film critiques the sexualization of minors and how social media accelerates it. A marketing image went viral, fury followed, and many condemned the movie without seeing it. Politicians demanded bans, some regions pulled it, platforms faced boycotts. The discourse became a wildfire where almost no one discussed the actual plot. Perceived exploitation versus intended critique. Censors and officials chose to act on the thumbnail rather than the thesis. The discomfort is deliberate. Routines filmed the way platforms encourage, audiences reacting the way algorithms reward. You're meant to hate what the girls imitate. Can imitation be seen as harmful? Children copy what adults monetize. The controversy proved the need for the conversation, but also how easily we prefer outrage to nuance. If you watch the film, you can still reject choices. At least you'll be arguing with the text, not the poster. Blue is the warmest color, 2013, Intimacy under a microscope. Adele and Emma fall in, grow together, and fall apart. The movie is sprawling and patient. Meals, art, jealousy, work, sex, and silence. It treats time like a sculptor, shaving people into who they'll become. Extended explicit scenes plus a long runtime landed it in censors' crosshairs. Some countries imposed strict age bars, others refused theatrical runs or demanded edits. Debate also flared around the production. Were the intimate scenes artful or exploitative to shoot? Officially, sexual explicitness. Unofficially, discomfort with a mainstream, very detailed portrait of queer intimacy. When art lingers, censors label it too much. The breakup dinner is the knife. No nudity, just pride, shame, and sentences that can't be unsaid. The film's cruelty is realism. Love can be formative and still fail. It looks at first love as an education you keep forever. The censorship chatter reduces it to scenes, the movie expands it to a life. Whether or not you love every choice on set, the finished story refuses to treat queer romance as a special topic. It's just love, messy, magnetic, and unforgettable. The Death of Stalin, 2017, history, but make it treasonous. Armando Iannucci turns the scramble after Stalin's death into farce. Ministers bluff, betray, and blunder while trying not to be shot. The jokes snap against real arrests and midnight knocks. Some states called it extremist, banned cinema runs, or yanked it after brief showings, arguing it insulted national heroes and rewrote sacred history as slapstick. The past is policy, mocking it threatens the present. If laughter delegitimizes fear, authoritarian nostalgia loses oxygen. Executions and raids sit beside punchlines, never letting you forget what the humor describes. The contrast is the point. A state that kills also files forms, and both can be ridiculous. One sees authoritarianism as paperwork with a gun. The ban is the film's best review, proof that fragile myths still need guards. If truth makes power nervous, jokes make it sweat. Persepolis, 2007, cartoons, courage, and censors. Marjane Satrapi turns her graphic memoir into stark black and white animation about growing up during the Iranian Revolution, then trying to find herself in Europe. It's intimate, funny, political, and very personal. Exactly the kind of story that makes big systems nervous. Because the film uses a child's eye to show arrests, war, and everyday rulemaking, it lands with the force of lived truth. No lectures, just memories, a girl who wants Iron Maiden tapes and freedom, a family trying to stay decent under a regime that changes the rules weekly. That directness, not the drawings, caused heat. Authorities in several countries labeled parts anti-Islamic or politically sensitive, trimmed scenes for TV, delayed releases, or limited screenings. The worry wasn't gore or sex, it was influence, a citizen speaking plainly about life under ideology. Violence is mostly implied. The pain is social. Friends disappearing, women policed for clothing, neighbors policing one another. The animation style sharpens the point. It removes distraction so the emotions hit harder. Basically, it is about how ordinary people bend, then break, then rebuild under pressure. Persepolis argues that telling your own story is an act of civic courage. The bans and edits accidentally confirm the thesis. When power fears a cartoon, the problem isn't the ink, it's the truth inside the lines. Across both parts, the pattern holds: touch faith, expect flames. As in The Passion, Last Temptation, Da Vinci, and The Life of Brian. Belief is identity, fights back. Touch power, expect paperwork. As seen in Persepolis, Death of Stalin, The Interview, and The Dictator. Bans are the laugh track for thin skin. Touch sex, expect scissors. You experience this in Blue, Basic Instinct, and Wolf. Ratings boards measure seconds, audiences argue context. Touch harm, expect hard lines. Cannibal Holocaust crossed ethics. Outrage, there is principle, not prudery. When a film gets clipped, ask two questions. Who's protected if you don't see this, and who's embarrassed if you do? That answer is usually the real rating.